I'm Nancy Eichner from the Seacoast Village Project, and one of the founding members. And along with Carl Singer, Carl really got this Lunch and Learn series going about 3 years ago, I think, Carl, right?
Right.
So it's been a delightful time for us to get together once a month. It's always the third Tuesday of the month from 12 to 1 and explore some topics that are of interest to members and things that we all should know as people who want to get old in our own homes and our own communities. So welcome everybody who's here. Today we have Patty Webster from the Conversation Project. And I was telling Carl just before we hopped on, Patty comes from the furthest away of any of our speakers to date. She's joining us from Cairo, Egypt. So if you could just give her a welcome, that would be great. Just say hi. And Carl, I thought perhaps you could do just a quick reminder of our connection with the Conversation Project. This is our
Right,
second presentation.
right. So this is a organization that I've been interested in ever since it was founded. Partly I had a connection to Ellen Goodman, who was a Boston Globe and then a nationally syndicated columnist who started it with some colleagues. But Ellen and I happened to go to college together. So I didn't know her in college, but I clearly know her since then and have had our paths crossed several times. And end of life is something as a geriatrician that I'm very interested in. So I really appreciated the work that the Conversation Project has done to allow people all over the country to really have these kinds of conversations and to give us the tools to make one's wishes clear and to involve the people who are going to help carry out your wishes if you're not able to carry them out. So I'm really excited to have Patty here. We did have Kate DiBartolo several years ago speak to us. It's a topic that's worth revisiting because there's some new circumstances, there's some new materials, and laws are changing. And so, welcome, Patty, and thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Carl and Nancy. I'm really excited to see you all and be here today. So I just really appreciate you inviting us back. And I hope I do the work justice so you keep inviting us back. So thank you. I'm going to first ask for those that are on video that I can see, maybe with a raise of hand, who is familiar with the Conversation Project and knows about our resources? If you just raise your hand. Okay, so you all are pretty new. And Nancy and Angel, I don't see video. Sorry, I don't see you, but since majority that I can see are new, I'll spend a little time talking about who we are, what resources we have, and then what you can do and resources that you can use to talk about and really share your wishes for care, either your wishes or hear and help other people talk about their wishes of care. What I'm going to do, and I'm hoping you're okay with this, I have some PowerPoint slides that I'm going to pop up. I do that so you can see some visuals and you'll have a reminder of what our guides and resources look like. Nancy's going to send a copy of the slides to you afterwards. So if you want to scroll through them tomorrow or another day, you'll have that material with you. So I'm going to share my screen and pop that up. After I do some chatting, I'll take it down, make sure we have plenty of time for questions and anything you all want to talk about together. I'm also big on if anybody uses the chat function, you may not be comfortable with that, or I don't know if you all use it on the call or not, but there is a chat function here. I'll have that up and you can feel free to type anything in as I'm talking. I don't mind, and I'll pause. And if someone types something in or a question, I'll check that. If you don't use that function, you don't have to worry about it. So let me just see if I can share here. Okay, can you all see? Let me just put this on the right setting. Bear with me for a sec. I'm gonna pull up the chat just in case. Okay, super. Can you all see? I actually have now lost my ability to see you, but if you can, Nancy, can you see this slides well?
Yes, I can see it.
Okay, super. So the Conversation Project is really an initiative that is, and actually let me just pause and say today is April 16th. It's one of the Conversation Project's really big celebration days. It's National Healthcare Decision Day. And National Healthcare Decision Day is part of our work, but it was founded by a gentleman called Nathan Kotkamp. He was a lawyer, and based on the experiences he had with some of his clients and some of those he worked in the healthcare system as well, he set this day up to be a national holiday to celebrate talking about and really inspiring and empowering people to talk about what matters to them and their wishes for care now and through the end of life. And so it's a day on social media and in book clubs and congregations and all over that people are really talking about our wishes and how do we actually bring this up. So it's really timely. So you all are sharing this in a very timely, very good day to be sharing this information. So you all may have come to this because you have people in your life that you're accountable to, or maybe you support, or you might have something else that brings you here today. So if you do want to type in the chat, you want to use that chat, you can go ahead and chat in if there's something you want to share about someone in your life who may support you or who you may support, you can pop that in, or if there's something that brings you here today, you can chat that in. I'm going to share a little bit of background about me and some of these lovely people that are on the screen. This is basically who I support, who I'm accountable to. The loves of my life are all on the screen. So I'll share a little bit about me and my role with the Conversation Project and kind of what brought me here. On the very bottom corner there is my family. So that's my immediate family here in Cairo, Egypt. My husband is in the middle. My two kids are surrounding him and I'm with them. Here at the Great Pyramids in Giza. We are all around the world. So my husband and I live here in Cairo, Egypt, and my two kids live in the United States. So they're both adults. They're adulting right now. My daughter is in Chicago and my son is in Washington, D.C. So we've got a lot of spread in where we all are. So communication is really important for the four of us. The middle picture there is my heart. This is my dad and my two sisters, and I'm in that picture as well. My dad lives in Virginia Beach. My sister is his caregiver and lives with him, my middle sister. My older sister lives in Pennsylvania. Again, I'm here, and so we're spread out a little bit. My dad has early stages of dementia. He also has a diagnosis of lung cancer. And so we've had lots of conversations with him about what's important to him and how we can help him if we need to make decisions on his behalf. He absolutely hates these conversations and does not like to have them. He didn't want to have them. And so we had to figure out a way that how do we have conversations with dad that's comfortable for him. And so my dad is extremely giving and he loves his three daughters. And when we said, Dad, we really want to talk with you and help you as much as you have helped us throughout the years. Can you help me out with something? I really need to talk with you and it's really important to me. Can you help me? And my dad said, yes, okay, because he will never deny helping out his three daughters. And so we knew that that would help kind of tug at his heartstrings. On the left-hand side, or my left-hand side, so the other picture is my mom and myself. And my mom was the opposite, the absolute opposite of my dad in terms of conversations. We called her the conversation queen. She actually knew how important it was to have these conversations about her values early and often. And at first, like any typical daughter may do, if you do have kids or someone in your life who you've tried to talk with about wishes for care, they may have given you the hand and be like, no, and we did this to my mom. No, mom, you're not going to die. It's too soon. I don't want to hear it. And what we didn't realize is my mom, over time, based on experiences she had with her own parents, and she worked in healthcare. So she was a hospital chaplain. After being a labor and delivery nurse, she went into chaplaincy. And she understood that these conversations were really important. And so she shifted the way she talked to us and really talked about life and living. And she started talking about her values and what was important to her and what was a good day for her. And those conversations for us were really easy to have. And so we had a lot of those conversations over the years. And some things changed after a few years, and we just continued to have those conversations. We didn't realize until at age 73, which was young in our family. So my grandmother lived until she was 106. So we've got some really good genes and we have longevity in our family. My mom was 73, young, healthy. She had just gone on a trip. She had just retired and she suffered a stroke. stroke is always usually unexpected. For her, there were absolutely no risk factors. And so we had to make some decisions on her behalf, which was towards full recovery because she wasn't able to make those decisions for herself. So super important. At that point, it was recovery. She then suffered a second stroke 3 weeks later, which was more devastating. And all of a sudden, those conversations changed and it turned into what was quality of life for my mom. My mom was really prepared. She had her advanced directive, so she had her documentation. And I remember the doctor saying, and we gave him the documentation. And I remember him saying, I don't like these documents. And in my head, I thought, how could you not like this? My mom was so prepared. But he finished his sentence and he said, in the absence of conversations, because often it's more about, there's more to it than just what's on paper. And that to me was a light bulb in my head moment. And I said to the doctor, and my sister was with me, and I said, my mom's been talking to us about her quality of life. And so we actually knew what really mattered to her. And so we took her values and we took those medical expertise that her healthcare team had, and we were really able to enact and respect her wishes for care. And that's really what the Conversation Project is all about. And no matter how devastating it was for us, because it was a surreal time for us, we were not left with guilt or angst because we knew that we were following what my mom truly wanted. And so the Conversation Project is really all about helping people share their wishes for care now and through the end of life. We talk about early and often because doing this in the ICU is really a really hard time to have a conversation about this. And so Conversation Project offers resources to really help people talking now and ongoing. And so we joke that we should have named our group the Conversations Project because it's not a one and done deal, it's an ongoing process. So why does this matter? So why does talking matter? My mom knew this. We can't plan for everything. We don't know all the scenarios that could possibly come up. We had no idea that this scenario was going to come up with my mom. Her situation was unexpected, but we know that we can share what matters to us with the people who matter most to us. We have control over those conversations and really talking about our values. So we really try to take the medical and clinical out of it and really talk about life and living. And so talking really creates that foundation of a care plan that's built on our values, and that plan will be available when the need arises. And so we coupled those decisions with my mom with the clinical medical decisions that came later that we needed to learn about. And so our approach really is that shift. And what we've learned over the years has changed a little bit. And so our guides used to have end of life on them, but we know that for some folks, that scares people away a little bit. They don't necessarily motivate. When you hear death and dying, it's kind of that, it's a gloom and doom conversation. And so we have shifted our approach based on research and what resonates with the majority of people to really talking about life and living. And people, that makes it a little bit more accessible. We are all for groups that are trying to normalize death and dying, because that's awful. It's important. We want that vocabulary in. I know one of the groups that came last week, I'm a huge fan of the Pre-Dead Social Club. If some of you were here last week or last month, it was. They are phenomenal, and I love what they're doing. And so our approach is really, let's talk about life and living and what matters to you. So those value-based conversations versus the old clinical model, what matters, what's the matter with you? And we really are all about listening and helping people not just tell each other what they want, but also really listen and hear what the person in front of us is telling us. And so that listening piece is so critical. We've learned a ton over the years that conversations about what matters is really about asking and listening. And so this is a great quote. We've got a lot of quotes around listening. And this is one that really resonates with our team. It is often through the quality of our listening and not the wisdom of our words that we're able to affect the most profound changes in the people around us. When we listen, we offer with our attention and an opportunity for wholeness. This is something that we've heard over and over when people say, when the conversation changes and I hear people listening to me, that really makes a big difference. Our goal is very similar to Dr. Atul Gawande. And if you all have heard of him, if you haven't heard of him, I encourage you, if you're looking for a great book to read or a book to share with someone in your life who's important to you, he writes a book called Being Mortal. And he shares this wonderful quote: our ultimate goal, after all, is not a good death, but a good life to the very end. And that's what we're all about, is really to transform how we live until the end of life. And so what we do at the Conversation Project is everything we provide is free. We've got some wonderful funders that make everything available free. You can alter and use what resonates with you and your people. And so this is a snapshot of our website. So we offer a bunch of resources, and I want to quickly share some of those resources with you that you can take a look at when you go to our website. And so I don't have it on here, but it's theconversationproject.org. And that'll be on one of my later slides. So you'll find everything here on our website. We've got multiple tabs across the top. You'll find conversation guides that I'll walk you through a little bit today. Personal blogs that share really deep stories and some really humorous stories because humor really makes things accessible. We've got some videos that we've commissioned. I'm going to show you one today, and then a lot of resources on how to bring this to community. Because we have a lot of folks that once they've done this with them, with those that matter to them, once they've shared their wishes and gotten the conversation started, we find a lot of folks that want to bring this out to others. And so we've got resources for that. So I'm going to show you, if this works, I'm going to show you a quick video that we have. One of the resources, we have now 2 resources. This is a copy of one of the older guides. So we had it in one resource, but now it's actually 2 resources. People were really asking us for a resource on how to choose a healthcare proxy, a medical power of attorney, or a healthcare decision maker. That's what a healthcare proxy is. And how to be a healthcare proxy. And so we created 2 guides, and we also created this video that seems to resonate with folks that you could share if you're looking to get the conversation started. So let me see if this works.
Be your healthcare proxy? Like if you need someone to tell the doctor what to? I just go with whatever the doctors say. I wouldn't want to bother them. They're so busy. Doctors know best, right?
Be your healthcare proxy? Sure, I'd be happy to. If I'm in town, check out my Instagram pics from Peru. Wish you were here.
Oh, I could never let you go. I can't even throw a plant away. As long as it's got one little green leaf. I'd be like, can't we upload her to the cloud?
Well, heck yeah! I've given this a lot of thought. Let me tell you what decisions you're best off going. You never let them resuscitate. And if they even try to hook you up to one of those breathing machines, never! I got this! I totally got this!
How can you even talk about this? I can't, okay? I just can't. Mom, it's not like you're gonna die. No! I can't talk right now.
Oh wait, did I show you that meme from iFunny? The cat and the dishwasher? Oh my gosh, okay, so the cat's like, bleh. And then he's like, wow! Oh wait, sorry, what?
Well, hon, you and I have been through so much together. Here's what we'll do. We'll sit down, we'll get a cup of coffee, and you tell me what matters to you.
Well, it wouldn't be easy. I mean, I'd be sad, but I'd have your back.
I remember when we went through this with Mom, we really spoke for her. So I think I can do that for you. Let's talk about what you would want.
Okay, so hopefully that video shares a little bit about kind of what we have for you to kind of break the ice and have the conversation. What we love about that video is it brings some humor into it. We're not making fun of the topic, but what we're doing is we're making it light and accessible because that really resonates with folks. These conversations can evoke tears, but they also can really evoke laughter. And when you're sharing stories, that often really helps make it really accessible for folks. And so just quickly, some other things that we have for you on our website. We've got a lot of personal stories over the years that we've collected from different individuals, from different walks of life, different experiences and perspectives that really help and can be something that you can send and say, hey, I just read this blog. Take a look at this because it really resonated with me. Why don't we talk about that? And so it can be a conversation starter in and of itself. And so we've got notes from parents to their children, to this one on the upper right-hand corner, kind of funny, irreverent post about one reader wanted to make sure that if she couldn't speak for herself, she wanted her chin and hairs trimmed. And so again, this is something that it's going to be different for everybody. These guides, so on our Get Started page, these are our flagship conversation starter guides. And so we've got a lot of different variety of guides that are for you, and you can take a look through and see what resonates. The conversation starter guide there on the upper left-hand corner is kind of our flagship guide. As I mentioned before, folks had really wanted a guide on choosing a proxy and being a healthcare proxy, so we created those. We also have a guide to talk with the healthcare team about these things, so offering tips, maybe when and how to talk with the healthcare team. We also have a guide on what to do if you're a caregiver of someone that has Alzheimer's or another form of dementia. We've got one for caregivers for children that might have a serious illness. And all of these were developed with those in the field that are leaders in the field, but also the general public who have used these guides and gone through these experiences. We also created one on the right-hand side. It's called the What Matters to Me workbook. And that is a workbook for anyone who has been diagnosed with a serious illness. We created that with Ariadne Labs, one of our wonderful partners. And it's a really good tool to really just think through what's important if you have a diagnosis and how to help you live with that serious illness. So those are examples of our guides. I mentioned before, we've got some people when we started that we thought website will create awareness and resources and kind of house everything on a website. But a lot of people said, you know what, I really want to take this to Boulder, Colorado. I want to take this concept to my community in Dover, New Hampshire. And so on that little screenshot with the map, we host community calls for anyone who wants to actually take this further and spread the importance of conversations. We invite them to community calls, and that's just a sampling of where people are in the United States. And we've got people internationally as well. But we have folks like the Pre-Dead Social Club and Seacoast Village, obviously, who's bringing this to you all today here on National Healthcare Decisions Day, who really want to help spread the word and how important this is. And that's kind of the third part of our work, is really kind of bringing this out to communities. So I know that was a mouthful, so I'm going to pause just for a second. And the next little bit, and I just taking a look at chat and I don't see anything in there. So I just want to make sure that everyone's doing okay. How are we doing, Nancy? Because I can't see you all. Everyone doing okay over there?
I think we're doing okay here.
Okay. So the next little bit that I'm going to talk about is, so that's kind of what we have. And then just share a little bit about how do you bring up your end of life wishes? Who do you talk with? How do you do it? What are some of the tools that are out there? And I'll share some of our resources, but there are a whole host of so many wonderful tools that are out there. And so you have to think a little bit about what resonates with you and also what resonates with those that you might want to talk with at some point. And so the very first thing that we suggest is that you need to know first, before you talk and bring up your end of life wishes, you have to actually know what is it that really matters to you. So what's important to help you live or help you thrive? What's important to you now? Laura from the Pre-Dead Social Club mentioned this, and I really loved her phrasing. Maybe in my 30s, I want to climb a mountain, but in my 60s, maybe I want to actually just see the mountain. And so what's important to you might change over time. And that's why I mentioned before, these conversations we revisit them often because it might change a little bit. My dad is happy as a clam to be able to sit next to his picture window, looking at the water and having his golf on TV. That is good quality of life for him. My mom needed to be in the water. So if she was stuck in front of a TV, that would not have been, that is not where she wanted to be. She wanted to have conversations and be out there and really be intellectually able to have conversations. And so everybody's wishes is going to be different. And so no matter what it is, it doesn't matter for us. We have no stake in that, as long as you're talking about it and sharing it with those who are important in your lives and with potential healthcare team. And so, oops, my slides here. So how do we do this? So our conversation starter guide that I mentioned before, I'm going to share just a couple of the questions that are in our guides. So step one, we help you think about and prepare what is important to you. And so that guide has a bunch of these open-ended block questions. So you can actually literally put pen to paper and fill it in. You can do it on a computer if you like doing things on the computer, but really you can just kind of print it out, put it on a piece of paper. And so it kind of gets you thinking about, well, what's really important to me. And so I'll share with you some of the examples of our statements of that, what matters to me and what I mean by that. When people think about what's really important to them, we never really hear medical clinical things. We really hear things about making sure I'm saying goodbye to everyone, having one last look at the ocean. One woman said to us, really having the sheets untucked around my feet If I'm bedbound and stuck in bed, that's really what's important to me. And so it often isn't healthcare or clinical. And so it's really important to think of what's important at that end of life. What we hear, and we've gathered what we call a wordle. And so these are answers. And when we ask people what matters to them, these are some of the things that they have responded. So peaceful, happy, laughter, comfort, dignity, and calm. And so these are just what evokes when people think about what's important to them. One of the what matters to me statement that really resonates with our team is a colleague of ours said, as long as I can intellectually and socially help parent our 2 children, I'm in, give me everything you got. And so her husband was able to really have that concept in mind if he ever has to make decisions about care she'd receive, and doesn't have to think through a lot of the hypothetical scenarios to discuss that. So he can use those values and couple it with any medical decisions. So step 2 in our guide, basically, so we help you think about it, and then we start helping you plan what you're going to talk about. We have what we call scale questions. So you'll see it's kind of a scale from one side or the other. So when there's a medical decision to be made, I would like my healthcare team to do what they think is best, or to have a say in every healthcare decision. And so we ask you to think about, on that spectrum, where do you fit in? You might be on one side or the other. There is no right or wrong answer. You might be right in the middle. But some of those questions kind of help you think and help prompt those conversations. And so we had a husband and wife that was doing this together, and their daughter asked them I really need to talk with you about this. And so they sat down separately, and the husband and the wife filled out their wishes and gave it to their daughter, and her daughter started going through, and they started as a group going through together. The wife's answers were either all on the right-hand side or all on the left-hand side. She had notes and indications on every single question. Her husband filled in everything, was all down the middle and has no notes at all. And so the daughter said, this is great, but Dad, tell me a little bit more about this. Tell me what you mean by this. And so it just helped create that conversation starter, and they had a conversation about it. So that's what we're meaning to do. We don't have everything in the guide, but we have prompts to help bring those conversations up. The third section in our guide really talks about making a plan. So people say, okay, we'll talk about this soon, but we're really big on soon is not a time. So getting clear about, well, who needs to know what matters to you? Where would you feel comfortable talking, and where would they feel comfortable talking? And when will you start this? And so you fill that out and really have an idea of, how do I bring this up with those that are important in my life? So the first thing is really, who do I bring this up with? And so think about anyone who will have a stake in your care. If you are living alone and you don't have immediate family members, sometimes there's a term out there that's called solo agers, that you might not have someone who's naturally a healthcare proxy or decision maker. Maybe you've got a friend or someone in your faith community or someone in this group. You all can be kind of your helpers and your healthcare proxies if you don't have anyone else. But think about who might have a stake. If you don't have anyone, it might be your healthcare team. It might be someone, your doctor. So maybe you have a general practitioner or a nurse that you see. Maybe it's a social worker. Think about who might be an important person in your life. If you do have a family member or a friend, or maybe it's a partner, if you have siblings, or if you have children, you might want to talk with them. Not everybody needs to have the same conversation. So really the most important thing is thinking about who your healthcare proxy is. And so who is that person that in that video really can help enact your wishes, and who do you trust? You might have a full-on conversation with that person, but don't just stop there. Make sure the others in your circle understand that, hey, Anna is my healthcare proxy. I chose Anna. She knows all the details. She's going to honor my wishes. I want you to know that. And because I want you to be with me without having that burden of decision making on you. And so you can make sure people know that. So we had a couple that came to one of our sessions. They were married, but it was a late marriage. And so the husband had adult kids from a previous marriage. He picked his new wife to be his healthcare proxy, had conversations with her, but he didn't tell his kids. And so the conversation really would be with the kids to say, hey, I picked my new wife, she knows, but let me tell you a little bit about this. So you want to make sure that those that have a stake might understand that. And then the other thing is really, how and where would people feel comfortable? And so maybe a conversation isn't going to resonate with that person. And so you have to think about, well, what resonates with that person? Maybe it's somebody who communicates by text or email. So you can send an email to them. Maybe they resonate with really planning something ahead. And so you tell them, hey, I want to talk about this next weekend. Maybe we can sit down together in a place that's comfortable and talk about this. And so that's a little bit about ways to bring it up. And so there's lots of ways, and I'll share a little bit more with you on that. When to have this conversation, we often share with people, again, early and often. So we really encourage not just those that are aging in an older age. We really encourage those from age 18 up to talk about this. So we encouraged my two kids who you saw, once they turned 18 and were going off to college, we sat down and made sure that they had healthcare proxies. And then I had conversations with them. My son ran away from me because he didn't want to talk about it. But on the way to driving up to university, he was stuck in the car. So I tried it again in a different way. And we had a different kind of conversation because he was stuck. He couldn't run away from me. And he said, Mom, I really don't know what I want. And I said, that's okay. And he said, if you can just decide for me, and like, that's fine. I will do that for you. And so those conversations are really important. So you want to kind of clarify if someone says to you, I want my kids to make decisions. I really don't have preferences. That's the conversation you have. Because if the kids have to enact decisions on your behalf, or a friend has to act a decision on your behalf, and you haven't told them that, hey, I don't know what I want. I'm okay with whatever you decide. If they haven't heard that from you, they're going to have stress thinking about, I don't know what she wants. And so that's another way to do it. We often say when to have a conversation, kind of major life events. And so birthdays are really great. Turning 60, 70, 80, those are really good times to actually say, hey, for my birthday, I'd like to have a conversation. One of the women that I was in one of the conversation group with, her husband really did not want to talk about this. And so on her 60th birthday, he said, what do you want for your birthday? And she said, the only thing I want is to sit down and have a conversation about what really is important to me. And he said, okay, I can do that. And so they planned it for her 60th birthday to sit down. So those are just a little bit of examples of kind of when to do this. How to get it started. In our conversation starter guide, we have some prompts. And so I won't read through all of those, but we have prompts to help you. So think about what is going to resonate with the person that you might want to talk about. That very last one is kind of a really good one that you can use. You can use today's session to say, hey, I was watching this presentation today and it made me realize I don't know what you want if there's ever a time you can't speak for yourself. Or you can say, I've never told you what I want if I can't speak for myself. Can we talk about it? When would be good for you? You can say, I just learned about National Healthcare Decisions Day. Let me tell you a little bit about what you learned. And so using that as kind of a segue into this often helps. We have other tools. So that's kind of the who and how. And in addition to our tools, there's some other great tools out there. On the left-hand side here, I listed a couple other organizations. So Prepare for Your Care. If you type that into Google, it'll pull up the organization. That's the name of the organization. They have some really wonderful documents. Our work is we're really focused on the conversations and not necessarily the documentation. Documentation, though, is also really important. And so Prepare for Your Care offers different documents and different prompts for you. 5 Wishes is another organization that has a wonderful advance directive. And then caringinfo.org has a whole host of information by state and also by topic. And you can just kind of explore on their website. So there's all sorts of things that resonate with folks. On the right-hand side, these are just some examples of some blogs that we have that have come up from some common questions. And so we have some ideas and things to keep in mind if you are that solo ager. And so if you don't have immediate family members or kind of those obvious people, we've got some tips for you. If someone doesn't want to listen, so if you're like that redhead in the video, there's someone who just doesn't want to talk about it, we have tips on how to tell someone your wishes when they really don't want to listen, and some of those other blogs that we hope are helpful. I know I'm throwing a lot out at you, so hopefully this is helpful for you all. Other things to consider, the only other thing I want to say here, so we talked a little bit about the role that you want. And so if you don't know what you want and you want your siblings to decide, and make sure you tell them that. That's kind of what we mean about the role you want to have. Types of care. Sometimes what we hear is someone says, oh, I just pull the plug. Or they might say on the other spectrum, I want everything. Give me the whole enchilada. I want every type of treatment you want. that's awfully hard because we don't really know what that means. There's often not a plug to pull, or we don't know what all those treatments are. And so it's really helpful to ask someone, maybe you can unpack that a little bit. What are you afraid of? Sometimes people are afraid of not getting the right care, or not getting something, or getting too much care. And so asking those questions, and what do you mean, a little bit more about that. The last thing here is the role others will play. It's really important to think about how much you want people involved in this. And so a proxy, a healthcare proxy, doesn't necessarily have to be, if you have a partner, it doesn't have to be your partner, or if you have a sibling, maybe they aren't the best person. Maybe it's a friend, or if you have someone in your faith community that really trust. There's alternate ways. And so there's lots of different people who can be your healthcare proxy. The important part is talking with them, have them understand their role and really understand what it means. I'm going to not read this, but this is a really wonderful example that we have, that you can take a look at this later. But it's a woman that wrote us an email, and she wanted to thank us for our guides because she was having trouble talking with her elderly grandparents. The gist of this basically is she was doing a lot of telling them what she wanted and telling them her fears. She wasn't doing that listening piece that I was talking about before. And so she took a look at our guides and actually realized that she needed to change her approach and ask questions and listen more. And so she totally rearranged her approach and how she did this with her family members. I think I'm going to stop there. The last thing is that we've got some wonderful things that we've learned recently about hope. Hope changes as we age and as we progress in our life, or as our health condition changes. And so this was a quote from a doctor who wrote a wonderful article about giving hope as kind of in healthcare changes over time. So early on, we might hope for cure. When that's impossible, we hope for as much good time as possible. And then maybe at a later point, we hope for relief from suffering. And then in everyone's life, we reach a time when we're hoping for death with dignity. And so thinking about where we are in that spectrum and having that conversation, oftentimes people think, I don't want to give up on my family member, but it's not giving up. It's really understanding that your father's a strong man. It's just his body that might be struggling. And so maybe it's just that concept of letting go rather than giving up. And that's some things that really resonate with folks. So I've talked for way too long. I'm going to share this as a letter. I won't read it to you, but I'm going to share it. We've got some really poignant letters on ways to document your wishes. This is also on our website, but I want to just stop here, pause, open it up, and see what questions you have. I'm going to are leaving an action for you. So we always ask people to think about, if you've already had these conversations, that's wonderful. Take a look at our conversation starter guide, see if anything else new comes up. Pick your person, start the conversation with someone. If you've got a document, make sure you dust it off. It's not filed away in a filing cabinet. Make sure you're really talking and keeping that up to date. Share that with a doctor, share that with someone who's important in your life. And then this slide, you're going to have all this contact information later. This is all my contact details. And that QR code takes you directly to our page with all of our guides. But you'll have my information. So any questions you have after today, we definitely are here for you. But let me just stop sharing my slides right now. I know that was a lot of information. So how's everyone doing? What questions? How does this resonate? What are you all thinking about?
Patty, thank you for such a great presentation. So what questions, what comments are out there?
I might want to say, one is that if you have several potential people, you've got to involve all of them, even if you select one or two, because as a physician, the worst situation was when the daughter from California who hadn't been involved flies in and sort of upsets the entire apple cart of what the wishes are. So it's really important to figure out a way to do it. Another thing that my daughter did with us recently was she just got her phone out and asked us some questions and recorded it. Because sometimes the words that you hear have more meaning or add nuance to what's written on a piece of paper. So since it's so easy now to make recordings, I think that's a good way to sort of give people an idea of what are some of the details.
I love that, Carl. That's so poignant. We actually have, we call that the swooper scenario, the first example you gave, when someone's from out of town coming in. kind of swoops in and upends thing. We talk about the seagull effect because seagulls make their droppings and leave a mess for someone else to clean up. And so we actually have a blog about that. And I wrote it because I am the swooper, because I live here in Cairo. My sister is caring for my father. And so I swooped in and say, oh, I work for the Conversation Project. I know what's going on. I know best. And I don't, because I'm not there on a day-to-day basis like my sister is. And so we have some tips based on what I learned and what my sister learned. And so we have a blog for that. So I appreciate that reminder, Carl.
Good point. Other comments or thoughts? Cynthia?
Hi, have you had experience, or your people you've worked with experience, when doctors don't follow their wishes? When my mom was dying, she had healthcare directives, but they kept wanting to, quote, keep her alive when in fact she was, late stage dementia. We kept saying that's not her wish.
Yeah, and I'm sorry about that, because that's really challenging for everyone involved. It's traumatic. And so we have heard stories where clinicians don't necessarily follow. And that's why it's so important to have those wishes, not just the conversation, but documented and shared with your healthcare team ahead of time. And so we know that the Conversation Project works on the community side of things. We also have work on the healthcare side, because we know we can do as much as we want in the community, but if those on the healthcare side are not ready for conversations and not listening to us, it does no good and actually does harm. We can't guarantee that everything's going to be followed, but as long as if you're able to share, not everybody has a general practitioner. And so having it documented and talking and bringing it with you, that's when the documentation is really important. Carl, you also might have a lot of experience, obviously, being a geriatrician about this.
Patty, have your team developed things for the states that have physician-assisted dying, so we can document that where it's available?
Yeah, we kind of stay away from the medical aid in dying just because of its policy, and we're really neutral in terms of that. And so we try to keep neutral from that. But there's some really great organizations. Compassion and Choices is one that really focuses on medical aid in dying. And so they've got a whole host of resources for that. What we do have is we have a guy that's had to talk to a healthcare team. And so we're trying to help. When you do have those conversations, you've got the documents, how do you actually bring it up with the healthcare team? And so in that guide are tips on how to make sure that those wishes actually get translated and they are respected from the healthcare perspective. But I definitely encourage you all to check out Compassion and Choices if you're interested in medical aid in dying and more on that.
Patty, do you think that the POLST or the MOLST forms help a little bit with getting some of these wishes into more standard medical lingo?
Yeah, and the POLST and MOLST, so we're not experts in that, but what we know is, so those are physician orders for life-saving treatment, or medical orders for life-saving treatment. That's the POLST and MOLST acronym. And so those are usually enacted when you have a serious illness or you're late stage, or it's enacted from a clinician standpoint. And so it's not something that we would recommend you filling out, because you can find these forms online. Like my in-laws were looking for them during when COVID was smack in our face. It was smack in front of everyone's faces. And so we encourage them, talk to your doctor about that, because it's really a form that the doctor and you work together and talk through. And so what we suggest is think about what's important to you. Look through the guide, have an idea of what you want to bring it to the doctor and ask your health, and I say doctor, but it could be a nurse, a practitioner, could be a nurse, could be a social worker, whoever is in your healthcare team. Bring that to them and ask about that to see if you are at that stage needing a POLST and a MOLST. And Carl, am I serving this justice from a clinician standpoint?
No, I think that's right. That those are things, because they would be the ones that would order them or not order them.
Yeah.
They're the ones that have to work. I have to sign. I signed one this morning, so.
Oh yeah, okay.
So.
And for my dad, we did that for my dad. So he had wishes, and so we went through the conversation starter guide and jotted down what was important to him, and then we went to the doctor and said here. And so she talked with us about that. So same thing. Sorry to interrupt, Carl.
Yeah, no, the other thing I was just thinking, when I first had this discussion with my children, we were all together as a family and at a campground. And so we thought that sitting around a campfire with a big moon up in the sky would be a really good time to sort of make it a very, a wonderful time, but also a time to share. And so that's what we ended up doing.
I love that.
Yeah. So again, trying to find a time when you all can be in the same room or the same space, I think is helpful too. So
I would say too that's I love that idea. If it's impossible, like my family, it's really hard because we're so spread out, and so it's okay to have conversations with different people at different times. But it is important to make sure that everyone's on the same page. So my mom did that. So her siblings were spread out all over, and the sisters were spread out. But so she had conversations with everybody. When all of us had to get together to figure out what quality of life would look like for my mom, we had a phone call with the siblings and with my mom's siblings and ourselves. We all realized we were all on the same page because my mom had individual conversations with each of us, and so that was also helpful as well. So there's lots of different ways you can do it.
and Zoom really makes that possible, no matter where in the world you are. All you have to do is have some technologically astute person help set it up, and you can have that conversation no matter where you live.
I'd love to hear if anybody has any other, like, have you shared your wishes, any stories or any helpful tips for others?
I was the one in my family who would talk to my dad. He had COPD and cancer and was in the hospital a lot. And we had those conversations many times that the rest of the family didn't want to be involved with. But when he had his last hospital visit, I was in Antarctica. I was as far away as I could possibly be. And I think the thing that comforted me the most was my older brother just saying, we could hear the conversation in our head because it had gone on for so long. And wishes had changed over time, but the values had come through. So it's very comforting just to feel like someone was honored. I was grateful for the conversation. I think one of the things I'm looking forward to is the looking at that guide in more detail about conversation starters, because that's a hard thing.
We've got in that guide. We also have some other things on our website as well to how to get those conversations going. So another blog that and this is all from what we've learned from individuals who share with us. This worked for me. This worked for me. One woman said on Thanksgiving, she kind of held, Carl, Nancy, you may have heard this. She held the pumpkin pie hostage, and she said, "No pumpkin pie until you would tell me how you want to live and die." And that worked, and that actually started a conversation because people really want a pumpkin pie. Another woman that at a workshop that we ran said she tried that, and she actually rolled up healthcare proxies and put it in the napkin ring holder and put it around the table for everybody to have to spark the conversation. And she got crickets because that was not the way to approach it in her family. So you have to think about what's going to resonate and really kind of stick with my people.
Cynthia, did you have something?
I was just going to share, we had the difficult situation with my dad. He contracted Lou Gehrig's disease when he was just 70 years old. And I spent a lot of time, it was a bulbar region. I spent a lot of time with him to get my mother, kick her out of the house. He couldn't talk, but he could still type. So we had a voice activated computer. This was he died in 1991, so it was a long time ago. But he made it very clear to me he did not want to go on machines at the end of his life. But there wasn't any, assisted suicide. He asked his doctors to help him. And he ended up taking his own life. We laughed and cried. We said, God damn it, he did what he wanted. Because he had told us that he was beginning to have to go on oxygen for breathing, but he was an engineer. He figured it out. And my mom had gone to church. This is the way he did it. The indoor-outdoor vacuum cleaner he had hooked to the tailpipe of his car. Doors were shut in the garage, and wasn't very strong, but he had gotten a brick to put on the gas pedal, and he had found his keys. My mother suspected something might happen, but he had found the keys and he put the car in neutral and he inhaled the exhaust. And the doctor said his lung capacity was so limited, he passed out in 30 seconds right away. And then, of course, the carbon monoxide filled the garage and he died. And my mother came home from church and called, and we laughed and cried. I wished I had been there to help him. I don't know what I would have done because he really couldn't ingest any pills or medication. It was a quandary, but some people, there's sometimes your wishes can't be followed. I guess that's sort of a message.
Mm-hmm. Cynthia, thank you for sharing that story, and just knowing that you had those conversations with your dad about that. You can have conversations in many different ways. It's not verbal often, and he had agency. So I appreciate you sharing that story.
Amy, did you have something? Oh, Amy and then Angela. Amy, you're muted.
Okay.
There you are.
I don't. Now, following that is okay. This is different. My son knows that he is my healthcare proxy. We've talked. He lives in Colorado, but we haven't had these detailed conversations. Now, happily, he and his wife and my granddaughter are coming to visit in June. So I'm thinking, do I give him a heads up? Hey, you know what? You got to put on the schedule while you're here is this conversation, because I definitely do not want to do it FaceTime. I just don't. I want them, I want them here. So I'm happy about the timing of this. And I do have the documents, the paper stuff is all in place in the updated advanced directive and all that. But all these details, like the sheets not being tucked in. I mean, that's brilliant. I love it. It just hadn't occurred to me to get that detailed about it. But thank you.
Well, and I love that story. And also, I love your idea. So give him a heads up. I think that's brilliant. So then, because a lot of people need that heads up.
Is today the National Health Care Directive? Well, I'm going to send him hey, let's celebrate. We'll celebrate in June.
That'd be awesome. Yeah, National Healthcare Decisions Day. Yep, is today.
Great. Thank you.
That sounds great. How about Angela?
Because of the issues we had with my husband's parents dying quite a number of years ago, they died within a year of each other, and the problems David had managing the issues with his 3 siblings, they had never talked about any of those things. And then when my dad died, he knew kind of what he wanted, but I had trouble with my mother, who had his healthcare proxy, getting her to accept, even when he was in hospice care and the nurses were saying he was dying. My mother kept saying, don't leave me, don't leave me. And I finally talked to her and said, you need to tell him it's okay. And he died the next day. So because of those experiences, David and I, a long time ago, put in writing what we want. And our daughter lives in Durham. Our son lives in Atlanta, and they were sharing those roles for quite a long time. And then probably 3 years ago, we decided that because of Patrick's not being near and Erin being right here 6 miles from us, that we would have her take on those roles. And Patrick was fine with that. He said he understands because she will be there and I won't be. But she and he agreed that she would talk with him, and he understands he's on board with everything, but he just thought it would be so complex if one of us was in serious issues and decisions had to be made quickly, or talking with doctors. So it's I think because of the experiences we had with both sets of parents, we learned years and years and years ago that we didn't want our children to be put in that situation. And I've learned some things. I just sent my daughter your website because there's some things in there that I think she can share with other families. My son-in-law's father just died last week in Richmond, Virginia. And that family is in turmoil. Even while he was on hospice care, they were in turmoil, and they still haven't agreed on funeral services. It's just families need to talk about this. And fortunately, we had that view, but I know a lot of people don't. And I will be sharing your website with lots of people I know that need to start these conversations.
Thank you, Angela. Those stories and the experiences that really, when people go through experiences like that, that's a wonderful way to bring that up. So let me share you that experience. So thank you for sharing that. And I love that you're sending people things already to your daughter. It sounds like you are on the right page. For those that have people that are out of town, it's still okay. Like, you don't necessarily need to pick someone who's close in. If they can, if there's someone close and who can respect your wishes, and that is the right person, absolutely. If you feel like someone who's nearby isn't necessarily the right one, you also can pick somebody out of state, and because the doctors can always get someone on the phone,
right,
and talk about that. So I just want to throw that in just in case someone doesn't have someone near. But I love, Angela, your experiences. I don't love your experiences. You had hard experiences, but I love the way that you just shared that.
Well, and we learned from them. That's important.
Well, great. I really want to thank you for a wonderful presentation. And I'm so glad that, we have the Conversation Project and all the wonderful free resources that are available to people. I think it's a difficult time, and I think the more help we can give to people, and really appreciate you coming to us from Cairo, Egypt. That's a special thing about today's meeting. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Cynthia was just in Cairo last month, right? Or 2 months ago.
You were here.
You're muted, Cynthia.
Yes, we were. We were in Egypt, Jordan, and Turkey.
Oh, well, if you come again, look me up. You can stay at our house in Cairo. Anybody.
Oh my goodness.
That sounds great.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So next month, we're going to continue a conversation. I think Patty set it up well with sort of living well, but we're going to talk about the art of dying. And Elizabeth McHugh, who's one of our members, Mary Elizabeth McHugh, was one of our most beloved hospital chaplains in this area. And she has developed an interest in this topic. And so she's going to share some of her research and some of the thoughts that she has about a good death. So if we start the conversations with our families, we might come to that presentation with some more ideas too. But thank you so much, Patty, for being here. And thank you, Carl, for all your connections.
See you next time.
Thank you.
Very helpful.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.